I'm going to show you how you can take a boring location and make it far more impressive, just like this. If you have a camera, you make videos for YouTube, content creation, or just to impress your friends, but you don't have a huge production budget, stay with me. I'm Aalon, and we're going to explore how you can apply this technique just about to any location. It does take a little bit of skills and a little bit of understanding. As a content creator, whether you're using your iPhone, your mobile device, or a camera, you might not always be able to find the best location or find a location that meets all of your needs. In that case, you can build your own set extensions. Many of the Hollywood production studios do this quite frequently. What's on the screen may not always be there when it was actually recorded. Now, you could go the green screen route, but it does take a little bit more skills and a little bit of effort because it does require getting the lighting just right on the subject as well as evenly lighting the screen. Or you'll spend a lot of time in the post-production in editing trying to remove some of the green spill. So I had an idea of what I wanted to use as far as the imagery of the scene. When I found the location, I thought, oh, I need to do these actions because I'm going to use this as part of the set extensions. And so one of the things that you want to be certain of is to really pre-plan your shot and write down the ideas you think you're going to do, because the worst thing you could have is when you go into your shoot and you get back into the post-production, things don't match up. Now, the biggest thing you have to consider is shooting in your manual settings, because you want to be able to control as much as you possibly can as far as your environment. In order to pull this off successfully, let me walk you through some of the settings that I use on the camera, the gear that I use, as well as the strategy behind the project. So we'll start with the manual settings on the camera. So I knew that I wanted to shoot this in manual focus, but even though that the autofocus on the camera is fantastic, I want to ensure that me as the main subject sitting in the chair stayed in focus at all times, and that it didn't focus in on the actual background of things that was coming in and out of the scene. The other thing that I shot was an f4 to still have lots of things in focus, lots of things out of focus, because I knew part of the strategy that I was going to use these set extensions. This also allowed me to pre-plan some of my movements. And I think that's one of the most important things when you're doing set extensions, is really understanding what you're going to do as far as the video and some of your movements, so they can kind of interact with the extensions that you're going to use. And that's kind of what you're going to see when we put this together. The other thing that I used was a tripod, because I wanted to get a clean slate of the actual location and minimize the movement. Now, this can be accomplished with movement, but it does take a lot more effort, and you have to get the movement just right. And so that may take a little bit more takes and a little bit more timing to get it lined up just accordingly. My personal preference is when I'm shooting any type of video is to ensure that I get at least 3 of the same sequences, because I've learned that sometimes you don't get the camera angle just right, or the composition is off a bit, or you didn't have your timing with the movement. And so getting those 3, a minimum of 3 for me, has worked very well so that I can get the best shot. Now, as far as set extensions, let's talk a little bit about where you can get those and find those. So there are some paid and there are some free, but ultimately the best free ones that you can do is shoot them yourself. So if you're out on location, you see some movement, you can go out and shoot either a train, a building, a fence, some sort of scenery, and try to put that together. But if you don't want to do that, there are some free sites such as Pixels and Unsplash. Then there are also some paid sites such as Adobe Stock and Storyblocks. Now, I will leave some of the links down below to some of those free and paid subscriptions. So once you have found your perfect set extensions or your stock photo, now it's time to put it all together into post. And so you can use whatever editing software that you like, either Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro, or After Effects. And so in this particular demonstration, I'm going to use After Effects, but the principles are practically all the same. Some of the tools may be named differently, but overall, it's going to be the same technique that you're going to put things together to make it cohesive. So the first thing we want to do is find our set extension. In this case, is going to be the mountain, and we're going to drag it down into the timeline. And so once we have it into the timeline, we're going to have to figure out where we want to place this so that it fits into the composition. And so as you see, it's overlapping the video, but it's very hard to see. The first thing we'll do, we'll open up the layer within the mountains and go to our transform and turn down the opacity a bit so that we can see both the mountains as well as the actual video, or in this case the landscape, our initial image. So turning it down a bit, and now we can start to proceed to really figure out where we want to place this mountain. So this takes a little bit of finesse, trying to figure out exactly where we wanted to place it, because we wanted to make sure that it looks good within the composition. So the masking can be done whether you're in After Effects or in Final Cut Pro or in Premiere Pro. And so it's all about getting familiar with your tools that you're using to really get this effect to really sell, that it actually sits in. And so because the masking is going to be the biggest piece besides the color grading to get your set extensions to look like it's part of the actual scene. So the next thing we need to do is start creating a mask. Now this mask is what is really going to sell this effect. And so we're going to cut out all the excess items that we don't need within this particular picture. And so we only want to focus on the top of the mountains and a little bit below of the green pastures within this image. And so we're going to cut this out and start doing some masking so that we can really sell this effect within the composition. So the masking does not have to be perfect. We just need to get a basic outline. And so what's really going to help us is we're going to go down into the feathering and feather off the edges so that it appears that it actually sits within the original video. So the masking can be done whether you're in After Effects or in Final Cut Pro or in Premiere Pro. And so it's all about getting familiar with your tools that you're using to really get this effect to really sell, that it actually sits in. And so because the masking is going to be the biggest piece besides the color grading to get your set extensions to look like it's part of the actual scene. So once we have our masking done, the next thing we're going to head over to the effects panel and drag over elementary color and start doing some color grading. Your color grading is exactly where it means we're going to match the color of the mountains to the original footage so that they appear that they belong to one another. Again, it's all about your creative style. How you color grade really depends on how you want to tell your story. But the biggest piece, the colors do need to match, closely related. Otherwise, it's going to appear that the mountains don't belong to the actual scene or whatever piece that you're putting into your image. When it comes to your set extensions, really the most important thing is a couple of things. One is going to be your masking, and two is going to be your placement of your composition so that your scene actually makes sense and is visible, pleasing to the eye. Having those two things off can make or break your actual set extension to make it believable or not. And so we'll continue to work with this particular image until we get it just right to where we feel like we've got a good place to start on to the next area. So with the color grade, the one thing that we're needing to do is give it a little bit of warmth, because the mountains themselves, the image that we got from a stock photo, is a little bit on the cooler side. So we're adding a little bit of tint to it and adding a little bit of saturation, just a hint, so that it matches up more properly with the original video. So once we have our color grade to our liking, the next step is to really repeat the steps that we did with the mountains for the rest of the project. And so we'll drag our next asset onto the timeline and then resize. We'll do some masking and then a little bit of color grading to match up the colors of the footage so that it sits within the frame and the composition of this particular project. And so we'll continue working with this. And so now that we have our waterfall onto the timeline, we're going to resize and move it into place. We're going to turn down the capacity just a hair and scale it and place it over to the right side of the composition. I think that's going to be the best placement to give it a little bit of space within the actual composition. So we'll do the same thing for the bears. We'll add it into the timeline and move it into position, scale it to the right size that's more aligned with how far away the bear should be from the shoreline as well as the main subject sitting in the chair. And so we'll continue to move that right along with adding it in the right position of the water, because we do want a little bit of the water that's coming from the waterfall. So we did turn off the layer of the waterfall so that we can kind of place the water within the lake from the bears to match that up. And then later on we'll turn that layer back on and ensure that it is sitting together cohesively. So the last step that we have to do is add in the clouds. Now we do have to take in an additional step simply because the clouds that I chose is moving a little faster than it's supposed to be moving to make it more natural. So we'll do a little bit of time remapping to slow the clouds down, and we'll also do a reverse effect so that the clouds are moving in the right direction with the water, because as the wind's blowing, we want the wind and the water and the clouds to move all in the same direction, which is going from right to left. The other thing we want to do is when we place the clouds into the scene, we want the clouds to kind of sit behind the mountains, but at the very top. So we also have to add in a second cloud so that it goes in front of the mountain. And so when it moves, it appears that the clouds are going through the mountain and not just going behind or in front, to make it more realistic. So you can spend hours working to perfect your set extensions, whether it's working with your color grade, your mask, lining up your scaling of your compositions to really sell the effect that you're looking to do. At the end of the day, it's all about your creativity, and you can be as creative as you want and really create some futuristic worlds, or worlds that don't even exist, or worlds that really do exist. It's all up to your discretion. I would love to see some of the designs that you all come up with as far as set extensions. Please tag me on Instagram to share some of your creativity. That is it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new to this channel, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. If you like the video, please hit the like button, and you can also hit the alert icon to be notified when new content comes available. Like always, guys, stay safe, stay creative, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.